water, which is a huge subject. There's a lot really to discuss, some technical information and some more history about water. So to start with, I would like to share an excerpt from one of my favorite books, which is called Staying Healthy with Nutrition. And in this excerpt, it explains a little bit about how water exists and in what form it exists in the universe, and how it's transformed, and how we can access it. And I think this will give you a little bit of background on the importance of water filtration, and what kind of contaminants and what kind of form water basically comes in. So to start with, and reading the book. So water is a medium in which all other nutrients are found. 3 simple molecules, 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen, bind together to form 1 molecule of water, which is the most abundant and important substance, both on Earth and in the body. So hydrogen and oxygen atoms in water are never alone. And this is important, and we're going to speak about a little bit of this later when we talk about water purification and distilled water versus mineralized water. So water is a universal solvent, as most other substances on Earth dissolve in water in varying degrees. So in a mountain stream or in our bloodstream, minerals and other substances are always naturally present. So pure 100% water does not exist naturally on the planet. And this is why it's important to not drink distilled water, which is something we're going to talk about a bit later. So there's no place that's just water like distilled water. There are always minerals and other substances contained. So the planet's natural water varies in mineral content, as does the water found in the human body. The body is at least 60% water, but this percentage is higher before birth. At 32 weeks of gestation, the fetus is around 80% water, as it's surrounded by amniotic fluid. The fetus continually swallows fluid for nourishment, and without this constant swallowing of water and nutrients, the fetus would become malnourished and the digestive system could not be properly formed. So water is the primary component of all bodily fluids: blood, lymph, digestive juices, urine, tears, and sweat. It's involved in almost circulation, digestion, absorption, elimination, just to name a few. It also carries electrolytes and mineral salts that help convey electrical currents in the body. And the water requirement really varies a lot from person to person. It depends on our activity level. It depends on the climate. It depends on our diet and what else we're consuming, because of course vegetables and fruits also contain water. So here is a formula that shows how you can kind of calculate how much water you should consume by rule of thumb. So your body weight in pounds divided by 2. So this shows you the number of fluid ounces that you should drink every day. And it's really just a rule of thumb because, as I said, there are many, there are many different factors that could change that. But I think paying attention to this, just as a general idea, is a good way to start and see if you're consuming enough water. And basically, it's important when you're doing this calculation, it's important to bear in mind also that drinks like coffee, which is a diuretic, and diuretics essentially tell our body to excrete more water. And things like soda, because soda and really sugary drinks have such a high concentration of sugar, as they're passing through the digestive tract, they will actually suck water from our body in order to be assimilated and digested. So both caffeinated and high sugar drinks actually dehydrate us. So when you're using this formula to figure out how much water you need, it's important to bear those two things in mind and not count those as hydrating drinks. Sorry, I think my presentation is loading a bit slowly. So here are a list of possible contaminants in our drinking water. So microorganisms, this is things like bacteria, parasites, disinfectants, disinfectant byproducts, inorganic chemicals, so these are things like heavy metals, organic chemicals, so solvents, pesticides, and plastics, and radionucleotides. So it's useful to know, how our waters are contaminated, because then this gives us information about how we're able to filter water. So when it comes to water filters, there are many, many different types, as I'm sure many of you know. So I'm going to talk about some of the main types of filter. One is an activated carbon filter, and this works mechanically by forcing chemicals through small openings, and biomagnetically. So basically, because the carbon is activated, and by activated, what we mean is it was exposed to chemicals at high temperature and steam in the absence of oxygen. And this gives it some kind of electromagnetic charge, which basically attracts chemicals to the block itself, the carbon block. So it has this dual function of a mechanical function and a magnetic function. So the next example of filter is reverse osmosis, as I'm sure many of you know. So the water flows through a special membranes with microporous holes the size of a water molecule. So what this does is allows the water to pass through the membranes, but it rejects larger inorganic and organic materials, and it removes smaller particles. So in this sense, it's more effective than the carbon charcoal, the activated carbon. But the downside of reverse osmosis filters is that they actually remove many of the minerals in water, because it's such a small microporous membrane where the water is forced through. And basically what this means is that, if you're drinking a lot of reverse osmosis water, it's better to remineralize the water with something like a pink salt, or sometimes reverse osmosis filters actually have remineralizers as part of them. And a lot of reverse osmosis filters actually have, three, they have a sediment filter, and then they have a reverse osmosis filter, and then they have an active carbon filter. So through those three different mechanisms, they're able to filter the water almost completely. So distilled water. So basically, the distillation process involves vaporizing water in one chamber and then condensing it into liquid in a separate chamber. Chemicals that have a higher boiling point than water, like VOCs, those will not be removed by distillation. And the most important thing really to bear in mind when it comes to distilled water is that it has no minerals. And as I spoke about in the beginning, when I talked about the summary of how water exists on Earth, distilled water basically doesn't exist in the natural environment, because all water travels over stones, through soil, over rocks and waterfalls, and it's collecting minerals along the way. So it never really exists as a pure form. And what happens when we drink this pure water is that it leaches the minerals from our body, and those go into the water. So if you're constantly drinking distilled water, you will become depleted of minerals. So it needs to be remineralized. Although there are some instances in which using distilled water could be beneficial. So for example, if you're doing some kind of herbal infusion, it will actually encourage the herbs to release whatever properties you want to get from the herbs. They'll be released more easily into distilled water than in normal water. So that can be a benefit, to get a more concentrated herbal infusion. And there are also some people who use distillation as a detoxification process. So if they want to, because not only does it leach minerals, but it also leaches toxins from the body. So if you're doing some kind of special detox protocol where you want to leach toxins, distilled water could also be an option for that. So it does have its uses. So here is a scan from the book that I read at the beginning, and it basically shows different contaminants in water in the categories that I mentioned. and how they appear. So some appear in tap water, some appear in well water, some, and then which purification system will actually remove those. So what you can do is, by determining the quality of the water that you have, whether it's in your tap or in a well, you can determine which water filter is actually best for that. And how can you the best water? So how can you determine what your water quality is? So there's a great resource. It's called the Environmental Working Group Tap Water Guide. And what you can do is log in, type in your zip code. I think here I just typed in a zip code from California, and it will show you the number of contaminants detected. So here you can see there are 12 contaminants detected. And then it will basically show you what those contaminants are and in what concentrations they appear in your water. And it will also tell you the legal limit and what the environmental working group limit is. And there's a lot of information on the website about why there's a differentiation between those two things. They have a motto: legal does not equal safe, which I'm sure many of you already know, but they list all the studies of these different chemicals that appear and how they might relate to different health conditions, and why, in order to justify what they think a safe level is. So that's important. That's interesting to explore. And then lastly, what they will give you is basically a list of which filter will basically remove those contaminants. So you can really get a good idea of the site. You can have a good idea of the state of your tap water and what filter you really need in order to filter. And you can also use something like a drinking water test. So here is an example of one called Water Safe, and you can basically test for different contaminants. This one tests bacteria, nitrates, the pH, the hardness, chlorine, many different things. So I think using the environmental working group plus this, you should get a really good idea of the state of your tap water, and then therefore which filter that you should. So water filtration tools. There are many different filtration tools. I'm sure many of you already have your own, whether you have it as a whole house system, like installed through, so that every water, even coming through the tap or the shower or dishwashing or anything, is filtered. Some people prefer to put it under the sink filtration. There's the Berkey water filter, which is a countertop filter, and it's activated carbon, and that's just for drinking, but it actually does take up quite a lot of space. So there are many different options for your needs, and the full presentation where I discuss all of these different options and list what they do is on the Phoenix Live. So if anyone is signed up for Phoenix Live, Phoenix Weekly, sorry, which is the learn, basically you're learning on your own through subscribing to the course as a monthly subscription. So I do these lives for that, and you can access the whole presentation there. But for now, I'm going to open the chat and see if there's just any Q&As here. Any questions that anyone asked? Let's see. So is it healthy to consume lemon water on an empty stomach? So yes. So if you look at, I think it was the stomach acid that I did, you can see information where I talk about stomach acidity and why stomach acidity is really important. And drinking lemon water and also apple cider vinegar before a meal can actually help to trigger digestive juices and digestive enzymes. So if you're drinking it for that function, then it can be useful, although the apple cider vinegar is more effective than lemon water for triggering digestive acid, HCl, and also enzymes. So I'm not sure if you're speaking about it in that regard, like before a meal in order to trigger digestion. The only other thing that I would say is that drinking lemon water can really destroy your teeth enamel over time if you're drinking it all the time. So then it's good to use a straw if you're just always drinking lemon water all day, so that it's not eroding your teeth. So how important is water when it comes to losing weight? What does water do for weight loss? I mean, so one thing is that sometimes people can misinterpret hunger for thirst. Sorry, the other way around. And so they can misinterpret thirst for hunger, and then what that means is people will end up snacking and eating when really they are just dehydrated. So if you go back to that rule of thumb in terms of the formula, the body weight in pounds divided by 2, which is the number of fluid ounces to drink per day. If you're kind of hitting that mark every day on a regular basis, not including caffeinated and sugary drinks, and trying to avoid excessive round meals to not dilute your stomach juices, then I think you're on a good path to really know if you're actually hungry or just dehydrated. And I think that's important to discern if you're on some kind of weight loss journey. After losing weight by diet and exercise, my lips remain dry and bone and joints crack, even after I drink a lot of water. So I guess there's so many variables here. It's hard to know. So usually when we have dry skin, skin is more the result of something like fatty acid deficiency than it is about hydration. Although hydration, of course, being dehydrated will also cause dry skin. So again, go back to this formula, use that as a rule of thumb. Try to drink that amount of liquids, water or herbal teas or every day, and just see if that changes the dryness. But then it's also about fatty acids, because fats in the body, they help to basically lubricate, and our skin sometimes people get dandruff or really dry skin when they have some kind of fat deficiency. And this can happen when we're let's say you're avoiding fats, because people who go on a diet often think, oh, fats are bad and fats are making me fat, which is not true. And then the avoidance of fat can make skin dry. The other thing that can happen is that if you're not digesting fats well, so for example, people who have their gallbladder removed, people who don't have enough stomach acid, that their digestive process is not working, that bile is not being produced properly. So bile, it really is integral in the process of digesting fats. So if you have bile that's too viscous and too thick and too sticky and is not properly allowing you to digest fats, then that can mean that you're assimilating less fats and your skin is dry. So it's really important to focus on getting high quality fats. So things like animal fats when they're grass fed and organic, coconut oil, avocado, good quality nuts that aren't rancid. So ideally keeping nuts in the fridge so that they don't become rancid by light and by heat, by temperature. And then optimizing digestion. So I spoke a bit in previous lives about digestion. So chewing food, making sure that you have acid, that you have enzymes, making sure you're in a rest and digest state, making sure you don't drink too much water before meals or after meals, using things like digestive bitters. using things like supplementary enzymes or betaine HCl if you need it. All of these things will help you digest fats properly, and then hopefully help with the dry skin. In terms of bones and joints cracking, I think it's hard to say because there's just so many variables with this. I definitely find that supplementing with collagen helps with my joints. So usually what I do is actually add a scoop of collagen. Like a Vital Proteins is a really good brand of collagen because it's grass-fed and you can get marine collagen. So supplementing with that and adding it to like a smoothie, or sometimes I add it to coffee. This can really help with joints issues. Have you heard about Jira water? No, I have not heard about that actually. I could look into it and see what it is. Yeah, I'm not sure what Jira water is. One thing I would say, this is something that people always ask. I don't know if it's the case with this water, but a lot of people actually ask about alkaline water. And alkaline water is basically, so Kangen water is an example of an alkaline water. And some people actually put these sachets into their water that dissolve and make it more alkaline. And, you know, there is some benefit to that in some specific cases. But in general, we don't want to be making our stomach alkaline because, as I've spoken about before, the stomach is really acidic. It's between pH 0.5 and 1.5 around. It's almost pure acid. So if you're constantly drinking alkaline water all day, then you're basically inhibiting a really important part of the digestive cascade. And that will inhibit your digestion at every point in the process. So I don't know if Jira water is actually an alkaline water, but that's a note on that because people are always asking about. So I have Sojourns just tuning in. What do you suggest for digestion? So, so any kind of issue with immunity, autoimmunity, trying the autoimmune paleo protocol is a really great way to optimize digestion. Because you're basically eliminating all the foods that are known to be inflammatory. So that's grains, nuts and seeds, nightshade vegetables, so like eggplant, tomato, bell pepper, dairy, and let's see if there's another group. I think that's it. Yeah, those are the main ones. So for different reasons. I mean, we could do a whole presentation just on this, but basically the summary is that many different plant foods and nuts and seeds contain oxalates, phytates, anti-nutrients, mineral absorptions, all of these different things that they have in order to protect themselves from being eaten too much. And then those in the wild environment, that is. And then basically those cause irritation in the stomach. So it's almost like this idea of having a scab that you're constantly scratching and never letting it heal. If you kind of just stop doing that and let the stomach heal by removing all of the micro irritants that are going in there every day, then the stomach a chance to actually heal. And then of course there's, you know, the thing of removing irritants and then also healing, and then repopulating, and then feeding good bacteria, and all of these different steps in the process. But the first step is removing triggers. And for that, I think, for anyone with the kind of autoimmunity, the AIP diet is a great one to try out. And there's interesting clinical trials done on AIP. It's quite effective. So I would recommend to do that. Although it is pretty restrictive, but it's something that you do to find out what your triggers are. And then ideally you're able to reintroduce the foods, something that you really stay on for life. Okay, I think that is it for the questions. Thank you everyone for listening. And yeah, I will see you again next week. Yeah, here is Monica has put up the scan. If anyone is interested in finding out more about the Phoenix protocol, either the coaching protocol, which we do weekly on Friday, or the Phoenix Learn option where you can learn on your own and you have access to the course and you have access to the lives that we do every week. So those are those two options. And if anyone has ideas actually for, would like us on these lives, please reach out, because sometimes I don't, always know what everyone likes to hear about. And, we've been doing this for, I think, a year now. So it's great to kind of hear feedback about topics that you want to know about. So if anyone wants to post in the group about that, that would be great. Okay, thanks a lot and see you next week.